Thanks for joining us on The Fringe. What were we talking about today, Dave?
We're going to be talking about the DRC, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. It's formerly called Zaire. It was a former Belgian colony.
And it's one of the largest countries in Africa, both in population and in size.
Yeah, and it's also one of the poorest countries in the world. But it's very rich in minerals. It has a lot of gold, tungsten, and cobalt.
The U.S. recently helped broker a ceasefire between the DRC and Rwanda, its smaller but more powerful neighbor that's been trying to get control of the country's important natural resources.
In this episode, you're going to learn how and why this conflict in the DRC and Rwanda are important to your AI future, despite all of them likely being thousands of miles away.
You ready? Come on, let's go.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to On the Fringe. This is Dave. I'm here with Gavin.
Yo.
We're going to start this first episode of Season 3. We're going to go back to Season 2, episode number 35 that we put out. We were talking about the DRC conflict. And we're going to call ourselves out in this first episode. And I'm going to go ahead and say that I was completely wrong about the DRC and Rwanda Declaration of Principles that was put in place it was close to 2 months ago now.
You didn't think it was going to last a week.
I didn't. I had no idea that it was going to last and be as stable as it is between these two countries.
To be fair, Dave, neither did I. This week we're going to be talking about how we got this big thing that we've been yelling at people about, how we got it wrong. But we're going to tell you first the three things you're going to get from this podcast, which is ongoing peace process between U.S., DRC, and Rwanda. We're going to break down what it is, what it looks like. We're going to talk about why has the U.S. stepped in to mediate in a part of the world that we historically have not been that involved in. And 3, why are the DRC and Rwanda not only so important regionally to Central Africa, but also just to the world generally? So come on, let's go get stuck into this. Dave, what's the background to this thing?
Well, the DRC has had an ongoing war with its neighbor Rwanda, and it's largely been at war for the last 30 years. And the eastern part of the DRC has been unstable since the DRC has been a country. It's technically part of the DRC, but the government in Kinshasa does not have a lot of control in the very eastern part of the world, or the very eastern part of the country, excuse me. And Gavin, why did the DRC refuse to come to the table in the initial Declaration of Principles?
So the main militia group that's allied with Rwanda, that's been fighting against the Congolese government, M23. The government in Kinshasa refused to sit down with them, and the Rwandan government, refused to negotiate with the Congolese unless they were led into the negotiating process. So it was essentially a double bind. Kinshasa was really sticking to the line. They were not going to negotiate with M23 as far as they were, or even they are concerned, because I'm not really sure their attitudes changed that much. The M23 is a puppet organization of the Rwandan government, and giving them a voice in negotiations is recognizing an illegitimate political party. Their presence was the big roadblock to direct talks between the DRC and Rwanda. Rwanda said, if you don't put them at the table, we're not talking. Dave, how did everyone eventually get around a table?
Well, Trump and Marco Rubio brought both countries to Washington, D.C., and the U.S. and the Qataris worked together to broker a peace agreement. And the U.S. wants access to the minerals in the DRC. These minerals are very important to the future. And this looks like it was very similar to the potential Ukraine deal that Trump had brought Zelensky to the White House. This was back in February, March earlier this year. And that deal
Mhm.
didn't really work out. But this deal between these two African countries did work out. Gavin, why are these minerals important to our future?
There are a lot of minerals involved in the production of computer chips and phone chips and basically anything that involves computing is reliant on these minerals, particularly things like cobalt and tantalum, which they don't really have a lot of anywhere else, and they have an absolute ton of in the DRC. And
Yeah,
that's why it's so critical. If you want to build the sort of AI infrastructure that people are talking about, you need these minerals. And building the sort of infrastructure of the future, you got to have this stuff. You got to have access to it. And this is a serious concern, not just for the US, but for a lot of countries.
right. I mean, this is a national security concern, I would say, for the United States. And the State Department, and I would say the DoD as well, are looking at this and going, we need access to these minerals in the future. So we need to put something together somewhere to where we can get these. So, Gavin, who are the main players kind of going on in this between the two countries and with the US? And
Um,
I guess that third party as well.
Ye- I mean, there were a lot of people. So, and there were a lot of names, and like I apologize because it's going to get real confusing for people real fast if it isn't already. I would say the biggest name you need to know, and we've talked about him a lot, but we're going to talk about him again, is Paul Kagame, who's currently the leader of Rwanda, essentially has been since the end of the civil war there. So about 30 years now. Paul Kagame is absolutely integral to understanding this entire conflict. On the US side, of course, you have the president, you have Rubio in state. I think the State Department has definitely taken the lead on this. There seems to be less DOD involvement. There's generally a feeling that Rubio was very careful to put his face on this. He wants people to know this is a state initiative. Even though a lot of the movement on this from the US's side wasn't actually going through the State Department, he's definitely taken ownership of the peace deal. Felix Tshisekedi is the main guy in Kinshasa. He is I think, controversial leader at best. There were a lot of complaints and doubts and questions people have about his leadership, but he's the main guy in Kinshasa. M23 is the rebel group that has sort of spearheaded the insurgency in the east. And at this point, unless you're the Rwandan government, everyone's basically acknowledged that they're being run from Kigali, the capital of Rwanda. They're very much a Rwandan production. The
You've got
other,
Chinese interests in there too, right? I mean,
yes,
the Chinese have been active in this part of the world for the last 10 to 15 years with their BRI, and they're a part of this too, even though if they're not directly involved, the Chinese still have a stake just because they've put so much money into this.
and I have to say, having read about it, man, the Chinese have thrown so much blood, sweat, tears, and just sheer money at the mining sites they do have in that part of the world. I suspect that will be a significant sticking point.
There's going ons with the US and China and
And
other parts
they
of the world
put
that are not being discussed, and this is probably one of them.
100%. And it's worth mentioning when we talk about they put so much money into this, they've literally put money into roads and rail lines and mines. Most of the functioning mines that aren't like artisan mines in Eastern Congo were constructed with Chinese money and expertise. They were built very much with Chinese labor. So this is, again, they might not be directly involved in the conflict. They absolutely have a stake in what's going on. Um, Dave, what do you think's going to happen next?
Well, I think this is Trump's way of signaling the importance of rare earth minerals to the US. And he's using a lot of backdoor, I would say, initiatives to get this deal going through private industry. And you look at this and go, okay, traditionally deals were made government to government. And yes, this is a government to government deal, but this is largely going to be backed by the US private sector and by American mining companies coming back to the DRC. And the US left the DRC over 10 years ago. We really don't have that much going on over there. But the US is trying to come back into the region, and we're trying to say to these African countries that you are important to us. Actually, take that back. You are critical to us and critical to our future, and we want to work with you and have stability in one of the most unstable parts of the region.
I think there that might be happening. I think the way it's happening is a little rushed. And again, because as you mentioned, a lot of this is being back channeled. It's not, it's being rolled out really quickly. I mean, this is the initiative to, I mean, I hate to say this, but it's what we're doing. And I don't necessarily, I mean, I do mean this in a negative way. We're trying to grab as many resources as we possibly can. And because people have sort of woken up to the fact that these things are important, they're doing it in a really fast and dirty way. And I have to worry, seriously worry about the outcome of channeling this initiative almost entirely, as you say, through private enterprise. Uh,
was going to say, you just hit the nail on the head where these guys are still going to need to be paid. And if you
yeah.
bring in American mining, if you bring in American mining companies and they say, okay, we're going to invest, let's say, even $3 million, we're going to bring in $4 million to start doing some exploration over here. That is going to be a tremendous windfall. And if you don't have any sort of system in place to control that money,
yeah.
then you're going to have a huge mess on your hands because that money is going to
And
probably end up with the strongest couple of people over there. Could
yeah.
be, local militia commanders, it could be officials, it could be police chiefs, and you've got to have some sort of an accountability within the system. And if they can't put that in at the beginning of this, if they can't create that and then implement it and keep that across the whole entire region, which is going to be, I think, very, very challenging to say the least, that
Yeah.
this might go nowhere. But this is going to be their first big hurdle. It is having some sort of a system of accountability within the Eastern DRC. And if
Or
Trump
having
or Paul
having a
Kagame
government.
or the Qataris or all of these parties can put something together to make this happen, then bravo. You guys have basically solved world hunger.
Sorry, just on bedrock, I have to say the real issue is you have to guarantee security for the people living in this region. And if you can't do that, if you're going to go in and say, well, I don't care, as long as I get the minerals out, I don't give a shit, it will not work. This will fall apart so quickly, you won't have time to say souffle. It just won't work. You have to guarantee stability, you have to guarantee economic opportunity, and you have to guarantee just basic security. This is one of the most uh, war torn, famine affected, though unfortunately quite a few places are these days, but it's up there. Health disasters left, right, and center because there's no functioning health system. It is a nightmare. Unless you can fix that, I don't see this working. And I don't know how you're going to work that if Rwanda views a stable Congolese state as threatening and the Congo views Rwanda as threatening. As long as you have that dynamic of their strength is my weakness is their strength, you are not going to be able to create an atmosphere in which these things are viable long term.
I agree with that. I think security is going to be critical to keeping this deal alive.
Mhm.
And it's going to be very hard to guarantee security initially. And even if you do have it for the first year, I think once mines or once these minerals start to move and people see money flooding the region, and I mean, even if it is a few $1 million, that's going to be more money that's been into the region and put into the region than in the last probably 3 to 4 years, especially if it's tangible for a lot of the people where they can get access to it. Having a way for the money to be, I would say, accounted for and minimizing corruption is going to be very, very hard. And it's going to be critical to keeping this deal alive. And I
You know,
just,
which,
I
yeah,
hope it works.
yeah, I do too. I just don't see it. I don't see how you can thread the needle on this. It is such a Herculean task to just provide basic amenities in this part of the world. Um, and I'm afraid that there is a possibility, well, more than a possibility. People are going to look at this, whether it's the US, whether it's the Chinese, whether it's the Europeans. They're going to look at this and go, if we can get the minerals out, that's all that matters. We don't care. Yes, people are dying. That's awful. Let's just get this out. It's not going to work. It's not going to work long term.
And
Yeah.
if we can't secure the supply chains from this, even if you have a stabilizing force like Paul Kagame, who's been in power for a very long time, several decades in Rwanda, it's going to be still very hard, I think, to keep the Congolese government from going, well, this is our country and these are our resources, and keep them from going, well, we keep losing out on these and we're going to just step up and we're going to force ourselves into the equation. Even if it's set up and it's going well between the US and the Rwandans, and we're getting the minerals from Congo, Congolese citizens, especially in the West, are going to go, why are we being like we were by the Belgians 150 years ago? And this is our country. Foreigners get out. Everybody get out. And local militia groups are going to go, well, we're getting paid. You guys don't have any control over here. And you could have the whole entire country slowly start to split up and fall apart. And then you've got chaos in the heart of Africa.
Um, there is no plan to heal the patient. There is no plan to how do we improve this situation. The plan is how do we get the minerals and how do the people who need to get paid get paid. But beyond that, you are not dealing with anything beyond the symptoms. You're treating the symptoms, you're not treating the disease. And the disease is what I would call the resource curse, which you have an incredibly poor country that's actually very rich. And the scenario that you described, I, I think, Dave, I think that's inevitable. And I don't think that's going to take 10 years. I think that'll happen pretty quick because, in addition to everything you just said, something that I think people in the West are not always keenly aware of, the political environment in Kinshasa is not reflective of the rest of the country. Kinshasa is a bubble, and the people making deals there and living there part of the year and holding office there, these are not people who have very much to do with the average Congolese citizen. Almost nothing, in fact. Maybe they speak one of the same languages, but that might be it. Then sometimes not even that. Uh, the political elites are so alienated and so fractious. All it's going to take is one bad election season where someone gets the idea, you know what? Why is this happening to us? Why does this always happen to us? And if that gets vocalized, and if you have someone who's charismatic, and if that message spreads, you will not be able to put the genie back in the bottle. And I think that will set things in motion that will break the country apart. And I don't see how you avoid it long term. In the short term, yeah, we can put a band-aid on it, but you're not treating the sepsis. Uh, I'll put it like that. Leave you with a beautiful medical metaphor. Um, but
Well,
yeah,
the key to the whole
it's
thing,
rough.
though, I think you're hitting on is stability around the eastern part of the DRC. And if the other part of the DRC falls apart, okay, that sucks. But the key is you have stability around the mineral rich northern and eastern areas. And as long as you have stability over there, then okay, this will work.
Unfortunately, I think the route that people are trying to do that through is through Rwandan imperialism. And I don't think, again, maybe short term you're going to get what you want. Long term, you are not going to get what you want. It's not going to work. And again, you look at a map, and we talk about the disparity between Rwanda and its neighbors. And yes, Rwanda is a country that can power project like few places in Africa. But at the end of the day, there are a lot more Congolese than there are Rwandans. But even they have limitations. And there's always the possibility that they've already bitten off more that they can chew. And we just haven't seen it yet. That's my feeling. But again, I'm the Debbie Downer here, so I gotta say that. Uh, can you put on your little tinfoil hat, Dave?
Yeah, yeah. Boom.
All right,
it,
all
it's
right.
it's
That was
it's
quick. That was
it's not.
worryingly quick.
Yeah, I had to get up and look for it.
For all of a second. Uh,
Yeah.
you got your head on. Well, what do you think's going on, Dave? Come on.
So I I look at this and I put my tinfoil hat on, and if you go back and look the 1970s when the U.S. was able to have oil denominated in dollars, I wouldn't be shocked if there was something going on between a tech magnate and either Paul Kagame or somebody over in the region in
A
terms of
hundred percent.
we're going to be influencing something to keep the US relevant financially. There's going to be something going on in the background here that's not going to be talked about, but it's going to be propping up the US financial system for the next 30 to 40 years. The US is looking for another thing to back up the US dollar.
Hmm.
And I would imagine if you have critical minerals or something that can support the US dollar, then that's going to help the US stay relevant in the world, even if other countries in the global south start to rise up and challenge the US. So I would not be a bit shocked if like Paul Kagame and Jeff Bezos are working out a deal somewhere, or Paul Kagame and Mark Zuckerberg are working out a deal somewhere
Well,
where
I
they're going to
mean,
be
we
buying up
know,
or
yeah,
securing. Mhm.
we know our sort of bête noir on this podcast. We know Eric Prince is involved. Uh,
Mhm.
he was involved in this deal. He's got connections with all kinds of people. I would actually say Peter Thiel, I feel like
Yeah.
likely involved in this. Um, I would say Musk, but I think he has other things going on right now. I feel like Peter Thiel would be my bet if I had to wonder about who would be involved in this. But Bezos and Zuckerberg are as good as anything else. And I don't think it's conspiratorial when you think about the sheer amount of money that's projected to be involved, about the importance of a mineral like cobalt to an industry so reliant on this kind of hardware. Just it doesn't seem crazy to me, man. I think that's right on the money. And I think that's what's going on.
Hey, well, sitting here, very end of this podcast, and Gavin, what does this mean? It's a lot to take in. It really is. This is a lot to
It
take in
is. It
for
is. Oh my
for
God.
us trying to put this together, and I'm sure for you guys as well listening to this. What does this mean for the audience, for the people listening, Gavin?
It means, unfortunately, I would say it probably means the price of things is going to go up when we talk about phones and computers, simply because all of these supply chains are so reliant on particular minerals in this part of the world that if this supply chain is disrupted in any way, shape, or form, it will result in price fluctuations. Um, so that's the most obvious way. That affects, I would imagine, pretty much everyone who listens to this. If you're listening to this on an electronic device that uses chips, you'll be affected by this in some way, shape, or form. You may not even notice it, but you will be affected by it. It also, I think, is reopening the sort of great game for resources, scramble for African resources that we've seen before in the 19th century, where you're going to have more and more countries involved in trying to get their own supply chains. So now America has supposedly secured ours. Um, Countries, obviously China, but countries like Turkey, UAE, Saudi Arabia, um, probably peripherally European countries as well, will try to secure their own supply chains of these minerals. And conflict will likely erupt from that in some shape or form. But I think, yeah, the main effect it has is on any electronic device, you're reliant on having easy access to these minerals.
Yep. And if we don't have access to them, then it's going to be, I think, a very
I guess,
big change and potentially disastrous for
well,
the
I'm
U.S.
gonna have
economy,
to,
especially as we move. Mhm.
yeah, I'm gonna have to switch back to a Nokia, Dave. I don't want to do that.
Oh boy, we'll be playing Snake all day.
We'll be
That's it.
playing
On
Snake all
Instagram.
day. Oh no. I mean, that is kind of the best case scenario if these things are significantly disrupted. Yeah, right back to what you were saying, Dave. If you have this vision of we're going to have data centers, we're going to have AI running everything, not a vision I personally share, but if that is your vision of the future, unless you have these minerals, it's just not going to happen. Full stop. Kiss it goodbye. It's waving goodbye. You're never going to see it again unless you get secure supply chains. That whole vision goes away.
Yeah. So I've got no more to add. Gavin, anything else? Any last words?
Again, thank you so much to our listener community for listening to us babble on. Um, we're excited for season three. We're bringing you some really good stuff. Uh, it's going to be one heck of a ride, as it always is. And just thank you for sticking with us. And we appreciate you so much here on On the Fringe.